All set. So hope you have understood general anatomy by now. So I am just talking about the reproductive system, in which I will be dealing with the female reproductive system, just a general overview, and all of the details will be discussed in the pelvis. When the pelvis region will be discussed, and this region will be discussed. So starting with the female reproductive system. So why there is a need of reproduction? You all know this is the ability to reproduce is one of the properties of the distinguishing living from non-living. Please keep coming. And as the complexity in the animals is higher, so higher complexity in the reproductive system also. So male and female gamete, you all know it is male gametes in humans is called as sperm, female gamete is called as ova. So what produces ova? Ovary. So female reproductive system, then let's talk about the functions in brief. What are the basic functions? One function is the formation of ova. So ovary, you all told that ovary is dealing with the function of producing the ova. That means the egg is produced by the ovary, which is transferred to the uterus. Then this is the second is the reception of spermatozoa. The spermatozoa formed in the male reproductive system, they are transferred to the female reproductive system. Then this system, this is an outside body. Spermatozoa is an outside body, so it should be ready for reception of a foreign body. Usually the foreign bodies are rejected in the human system. In any system, they are rejected. But here the spermatozoa, it is accepted. So reception is done by the female reproductive system. Then providing the suitable environment for the fertilization and fetal development. So the conception and the product of conception, they are treated and they are reproduced in the uterus. Then the childbirth and the lactation. So lactation is done by the mammary glands, which are the secondary sexual characters. So for the structural outline, please keep coming, don't ask me. So in female reproductive system, your external genitalia, the external genitalia collectively they are called as vulva. They are different external genitalia, they are divided into different parts, but for a one common word that can be used is the vulva. Then you have internal genitalia, you all know it is vagina, uterus, fallopian tubes or uterine tubes, ovaries, and the mammary glands or the breast. So talking about the vulva, what are the different structures that we can see in the vulva? So this is the picture of a female external genitalia. This is taken in the lithotomy position. In here we can see the different parts of the female reproductive system which are external genitalia. So outermost, these are called as the labia majora. This one, these are the labia majora and these are the labia minora. So because of the difference in sizes, it is called as labia majora and the labia minora. So they are enveloping the region which is covered with the hymen, and this is the vaginal orifice, this is the side orifice. Then posterior to the vulva and anterior to the anus. This area, this is called as triangular area, is called as perineum. Arterial supply and the venous drainage of these areas. So arterial supply, right now you don't know what are the arterial supply of this region. So here the internal iliac arteries, they are giving branches. So this region is supplied by the internal iliac arteries and by the external pudendal arteries. So these are the branches which are coming from the abdominal aorta, which will terminate into the common iliac artery. And further when we go, the common iliac arteries will be divided into external and internal. And internal takes all the blood supply to the perineum or the pelvic organ. Then the lymphatic drainage. This is to the superficial inguinal lymph node. So this is the lymphatic drainage of the external genitalia which is going to the inguinal lymph node. Inguinal lymph nodes, they lie in the region of the groin region. That will drain by that region is called as the inguinal region and will be the related name will be the inguinal lymph node. So the perineum you should all know because later on the perineal body there will be a question when the pelvis will be told to you. There will be a question on the perineum, perineal body. What is perineal body? Write a short note on the perineal body. So perineum, for the basic knowledge you should know, it's a triangular area which is lying posterior to the vulva and anterior to the anus. Coming to the internal genitalia. The internal genitalia that includes the vagina, uterus, oviducts or the fallopian tubes and the ovaries. So two ovaries, two fallopian tubes, one single uterus and a vagina. There is no twinning of the vagina or the uterus. If it happens, it is an anomaly. So what is vagina? So before proceeding to that, I just want to show you this cross section where you can see this anterior region and this is the posterior region. So if you travel from the anterior to the posterior, the first thing that will be seen is the pubic symphysis. Posterior to the pubic symphysis, the bladder is lying. After the bladder is the uterus and the vagina, and most posterior to the uterus is the rectum. And after that, there will be the vertebral body. So that means uterus is lying between the bladder and the rectum. So what is vagina? It is a fibromuscular tube which is lined with a stratified squamous epithelium. So this region is lined by the stratified squamous epithelium. So why the lining is the stratified epithelium? There is functional importance that it is stratified because wear and tear keeps occurring here. So this is the stratified and non-keratinized. It is a non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, and this is the oblique passage which is upward, directed upwards and backwards. This is the angle of 45 degrees and in between the rectum and the bladder. Then hymen, this hymen is lying in the vagina, so it is a partial covering of the vagina. Then come to the uterus. So uterus is a pear-shaped organ that is lying between the bladder and rectum. So this organ is not lying actually straight, this is flexed. If you have seen the last picture, so here you can see it is anteriorly flexed. So this is called as anteflexion. So this is uterus in anteflexion and anteversion. We talked about anteversion and retroversion in case of uterus. This is the position of the uterus in the body. If it is forwardly flexed, then it is called as the anteversion. If it goes posteriorly over to the rectum, it is called as the retroversion. So usually the position of uterus is anteverted. The uterus in females, it is found in anteverted position. So it is a muscular organ which is very small in size, around 30 to 40 grams. So it is very small and the size is 7.5 into 5 into 2.5. That means 7.5 minus 2.5 is 5 minus 2.5 is 2.5. So it is easy to remember 7.5, 5 and 2.5, that means the length, breadth and the thickness. Now coming to the parts of the uterus. So this is the fundus, this is the body and the cervix. So starting from here till here, this region is the uterus in which it is divided into fundus, body and cervix. So how do we divide these regions? So uppermost, that is lying above the fallopian tube. These are the two fallopian tubes. So above this region, any part of the uterus that comes above the fallopian tube will be considered as the fundus. So this is the fundus of uterus. Then the uterine cavity is lying in the body. So below the fallopian tube till the internal os. In case of cervix, you have two openings. One is internal opening, other is external opening. External opening is opening into the vagina and internal opening is of the body of the uterus. Here it is called as internal os. So body, extent of body is from the fallopian tube till the internal os. Then starts the cervix. Cervix has internal os, cervix and the external os. So for you can read this one. Fundus, this is the dome-shaped part of the uterus above the openings of the uterine tube. Body is the main part and it is narrowest inferiorly at the internal os. So you all have seen it, it is narrowest at the internal os. Then cervix, this protrudes through the anterior wall of the vagina, that means opening into the external os. Now coming to the layers of the uterus. Layers of uterus, these are perimetrium, myometrium and endometrium. So with the name you can easily understand, myo is for muscular part, peri is the outermost covering, endo is the innermost lining. So that keeps on shedding or proliferating is the endometrium. Muscle wall, it's a support to the uterus. All the muscles, it is completely packed with the smooth muscle fibers. And the perimetrium is the outermost lining which is covered with the peritonium. So, can anyone tell me what is peritonium? पेरिटोनियम तो सबने सुन लिया होगा आपको. What is peritonium? पेरिटोनियम क्या होता है? Anyone who knows can raise their hand. Yes, please. Covering the sexual organ. Anyone else? कैसी लाइनिंग है? म्यूकस लाइनिंग है, सीरस लाइनिंग है, कहाँ मिलती है? कहाँ मिलती है? लंग्स में मिलती है क्या? हार्ट में मिलती है क्या? स्टमक में मिलती है बस? 12 बजे तक सब ट्रेन हो गए. कहाँ मिलती है? स्टमक के अलावा कहीं नहीं मिलती? डू यू फाइंड पेरिटोनियल लाइनिंग? So it's all present everywhere related to the GIT, gastrointestinal tract, and the viscera related to it will be covered with the serous lining, which is called as the peritoneum. So peritoneum, it is related to the uterus also. This perimetrium of the uterus is derived from the peritoneum, so it is covering the outermost layer of the uterus. Okay. So if it is coming from GIT, this is the pelvis, and above this is the abdominal cavity. So it is separated from it. Pelvic cavity is separated from the abdominal cavity. Yes. Yes or no? Yes. No. It is in continuity, but this peritoneum is covering it. So this lining you will find in the not inside the pelvic, but it is covering around the pelvic organ. So here, if it will cover the pelvic organ, so this is the peritoneum. If you can see this orange lining over the pelvic organ, this is the peritoneum. Now, because of the folding of the peritoneum, some space is formed. So here you have bladder and here you have uterus and the rectum posteriorly. So this is the spaces which are called as pouches, and here to the uterus and posterior to the uterus. When it is present anterior to the uterus, this pouch is called as the vesico-uterine pouch. When it is present posterior to the uterus, it is called as recto-uterine pouch. So these pouches, these are formed because of the lining of the peritoneum over the pelvic organ. And these names are related to the uterus because uterus is present in the middle. So because of that, they have derived their name from the uterus, that is recto-uterine will be the posterior, and anterior will be the vesico-uterine, क्योंकि bladder को हम vesicle बोलते हैं. ठीक है? Now what does the myometrium formed of? Myometrium formed of the smooth muscle fibers. Can anyone tell me why the smooth muscle fibers are present here? Contraction तो skeletal muscle fibers भी करते हैं. क्या? स्केलेटल और स्मूथ में डिफरेंस क्या होता है? Voluntary. So here the involuntary movement occurs. So there is smooth muscle fibers which are under the control of autonomic nervous system. Then you have endometrium, which is made up of columnar epithelial cells. Can anybody explain me why the columnar epithelial cells? Glands बनती हैं इसलिए. So anywhere if the epithelium is secretory, it would be the cuboidal or the columnar epithelium. So you have uterine glands in the uterus. Arterial supply, venous drainage, lymphatic drainage, you don't have to remember this, you just go through the names that it is supplied by the internal iliac artery. Venous drainage goes through the internal iliac vein. Usually the names of the vein, they are same as the arteries everywhere, and the lymphatic drainage will be going to the of the uterus and the uterine tube to the inguinal lymph nodes. Now, what are the supporting structures of the uterus? There are a lot of structures that give support to the uterus. One of them is the broad ligament, other is the round ligament. First, the broad ligament. What does the broad ligament formed of? It is again the fold of peritoneum that is holding the uterus in the pelvis. Now, how it is holding the uterus in the pelvis? So, if you see the peritoneum covering, it is going from the fundus till the body, and it is going as a broad fan-shaped area. That is, this hole is the peritoneal hole. So, it is covering the oviduct, it is covering the fallopian tubes and the cimbria. So, it is very broad in structure. That's why it is called as the broad ligament. Another support is the round ligament, that is starting from the junction of the fallopian tube and the body, and it is one of the content of the broad ligament. There are other ligaments that are supporting it. One is the uterosacral ligament, other is the transverse cervical ligament. So there are a lot of supports of uterus. Not only this, then you have uterine tube, oviduct, fallopian tube. What is the function of the fallopian tube? Transfer of ova. Where does the fertilization occur? Fallopian tube, है ना? So this is one more function. So these fallopian tubes, they are 10 centimeter long and they extend from the sides of the uterus between the body and the fundus. So that demarcates that fundus is above and body is below the uterine tube. So that is the label. Then at the end of each tube, the finger-like projections are formed, which are called as the cimbria. So here, these are the finger-like projections, which are called as the cimbria. Then what are the functions here? Uterine tubes, they are lined by the ciliated epithelium. So if the ciliated epithelium is there, that means it will help the ova to propel towards the ampulla so that further it can get fertilized and move to the uterus. So all the peristaltic and the ciliary movement can occur here. Then there are secretions of the uterine tube. They nourish the ovum and the spermatozoa during the conception. Then fertilization of the ovum, they also take place in the uterine tube, and the product of conception, that is transferred to the uterine body. Now the ovaries. So we have two ovaries in the female reproductive system. Two ovaries, these are the female gonads, which keep on secreting the sex hormones and the ova, and they lie in the fossa, which is called as the ovarian fossa. So they are lying laterally. So they are present in the lateral wall of the pelvis, which is called as the ovarian fossa. The size of the ovaries, it is 2.5, 2 and 1. So you should know what is the size of an ovary. It is 2.5 into 2 into 1. The blood vessels and the nerve supply, it will get through all the structures which are lying nearby to it. Then coming to the last, that is the mammary gland. So what is the mammary gland? It is a secondary sexual character which are found in the male and female both, but it is rudimentary in case of male. So where the mammary gland is lying structurally? So if we see structurally, when we will do the dissection, everywhere, like in upper limb we will start, then first structure that you will see will be the skin. Underlying that, there will be some fat, superficial fascia, deep fascia. Underneath the deep fascia, we will find the muscles, and the muscles are attached to the bone. So this is the structure that you will meet during the dissection. But when you will dissect this region of the mammary glands, the mammary glands, they are subcutaneous. Why it is called as subcutaneous? Because it is lying under the skin and the superficial fascia. If you will dissect here, you will just find the superficial fascia and the fat, and then you will find the mammary gland, that is the glandular structure will be found here. So that means it is overlying the muscle which is covered by the deep fascia. So here we have the pectoralis muscles which are covered by the deep fascia, above which the mammary gland is lying. So what is the structure of the mammary gland? There are a lot of glandular structure is present in the mammary gland. We start from the lobes. There are around 20 lobes in the mammary gland which are filled with the different lobules. Now these lobules, they open through the areola of the nipple through the lactiferous duct. So this is the basic structure of the mammary gland, and we will be dealing with the mammary gland in the upper limb. There will be the separate lecture. So this is all in the female reproductive lecture. This was the basic outline. Nothing more than that. We just want you to get familiar to these topics which will be dealt further.